What's going on, draft fans? Welcome into the Cover One Draft Weekly podcast. I'm your host, Russell Brown, and it feels good to finally say those words again. It's been 3-4 months. It's been a long time coming. I've been on a hiatus away from the NFL draft, just kind of occasionally popping in on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft, dropping some stuff every now and again. But I took a break from the podcast. Real life kind of got in the way. My wife and I, we bought a brand new house back in August, and we kind of built this thing up and fixed it the way that we wanted, something that we kind of dreamed of doing and something that I learned from kind of my first home purchase to now my second. But you can tell behind me, new fireplace, so I'm not doing too bad in this world. So we got some things cooking, and we got the Senior Bowl on the horizon. A couple more weeks, we'll be down there in Mobile, Alabama, breaking that all down. And I just can't believe it. I mean, we're under 40 days from that event, under 30 days from the Shrine Bowl. And before we know it, it's going to be the 2023 NFL Draft. So I've got work to do, as does the Cover One team. And that's why I'm here today to record a show, give it to you, kind of give you the scoop of where I've been, what's going on, what's on the horizon. And then we're going to start talking a little football here. So myself, I'll be doing this show every week, at least once a week, whether it's recorded or live. You'll find out. You'll find out on my Twitter page at Russ NFL Draft. You'll find out on the Cover One Twitter page at Cover One, or you can subscribe to our channel on YouTube at Cover One or at C1 Draft. That's going to be where all our NFL draft content is, video-wise, with audio, breakdowns, the whole nine. So if you want that, you're going to have to subscribe to that channel at C1 Draft. So we need them. We need those subscribers if we're going to do this the right way. So smash it, like, subscribe, comment on videos, get with me. I'll comment back. I'll break down a certain player for you. Whatever you want, we'll do. So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming. Really looking forward to it, but I won't be alone. There will be, on occasion, maybe every week, maybe a couple times every week, Kendall Merksey and Anthony Proaska, those guys will join me as well, like they did during the season for the NFL Weekly show that we did. But we've kind of shifted gears over to the draft side of things. We want to get in front of this thing because there's going to be a lot of content coming from the draft side. So there's a lot of players to get into, a lot of different scenarios. There's going to be some Bills stuff in there. There's going to be some just regular draft stuff in there, a little bit of everything for everyone. So we got you covered right here on the Cover One Draft Weekly show. So I'm not going to waste any more time. We're going to get talking ball, and we're going to start talking about the top 5 players right here, right now, the way that I see it. Even though I've kind of been living under a rock, that does not mean I haven't stopped watching football. I've still been watching football. I'm still paying attention to certain guys. And I will say that it's been a kind of clear-cut number one for me at the top of my board through most of this process so far, and that's Will Anderson, the 6'4", 245-pound junior edge rusher from Alabama. I mean, you are talking about a player that has size, speed, length, a blend of power in there. He's gotten 28 sacks over the last 2 seasons. He is just a freak athlete, and I think he's going to consistently get better. He's got a very good spin move. He understands how to long arm. He's fluid. He can drop into space. I mean, when you're talking about these guys that can drop into space, into coverage, I mean, we saw Aiden Hutchinson do it Sunday against the Bears. He was playing along the sidelines, essentially as a hook curl defender, and he ends up intercepting a pass, his 3rd of the year. Keep in mind, his 3rd interception as an edge rusher. I mean, it is absolutely wild what he's been able to do. I think Will Anderson's going to be able to do that and possibly more for an organization. And I think there's a good belief that he could be the first overall pick for a team, because Houston and Chicago, those are the 2 teams that are really fighting for that number 1 pick. And even if Houston ends up getting it, you could justify that they take Will Anderson at 1 and move up from the 2nd pick that they have later in the 1st round and take a player like Will Anderson. And we'll get into that because we're going to talk about the top 5 of the NFL draft order momentarily. But Will Anderson, for me, just what he can do off the edge, just a turn and burn type of guy, can run and chase. He can bend, fluid. You love his skill set. And he genuinely looks like I don't want to say once in a generation edge rusher, because it seems like every year there's a guy that's cream of the crop, but he feels like he's kind of here and everyone else is kind of here. So I look at Anderson and I just see a guy that I know he's going to test well if he runs. He's expected to run, sub 4.640s. He should be top of most boards when we talk about this for the rest of the year. And I would be stunned if he wasn't. If you want to have the next player up there, I can understand it. But for me, again, Will Anderson, so much to love with his game. But the next player, I can understand if he's up there, and that's Jalen Carter, the interior defensive lineman from Georgia. 6'3", 300, great length. I mean, he is a force, man, and he's versatile. He can play as a 0. He can play as a 0 shade. He can play as a 2-eye. I've seen him out wide as a 5. I mean, he can play anywhere on the interior. But I genuinely think he is a player that is in a role where he's not going to always rush the passer. He's not going to light up the stat sheet in that regard. And maybe that hurts him. But I genuinely think from size, strength, athleticism, and I think a potential fit for a locker room, he's worth the value at number 2. And you look at what Derek Brown's starting to do, a player that I thought was a top 5 player a few years ago, what he's starting to do for Carolina, the way that they're able to stop the run, he's a big piece there. And I think Jalen Carter can do that and potentially more for an organization, whether he's number 2, number 3 on somebody's board. So I think Carter is just got this length, this power, and this athleticism that really separates him from other interior defensive linemen and potentially some edge rushers in this class. And a lot of that is because of his versatility. So I'm very intrigued with where he ends up. And a lot of that has to do with the simple fact that there was the rumor from the national media a few weeks ago where there was potential concerns of character with Jalen Carter. And everything I've dug up, I mean, I can't find a thing. I really can't. I've seen coaches, teammates, they rave about this guy that is great for the locker room. He's humble. He keeps to himself. He stays to himself. Some guys get on him because he's a little bit too quiet. So I don't see how that's going to create any, riffraff or any issues within your locker room. But beyond that point, he seems like a player that has got his head on right. I mean, he's back in his community, in his hometown, giving back to kids, giving back to a community that gave back to him when he was unfortunate and going through some unfortunate times growing up. So I look at him and I just see a guy that's got a charity already. He's taking care of his own. He's taking care of kids. He's a leader. Teams look at that Georgia defense has relied on him at parts of the year. And I mean, they're in the national championship. Their defense is playing incredibly well, and he's a big part of it. So Jalen Carter, to me, number 2 player on my board. And I know that might be a little spicy, but I think he is one of the top 5 players in this draft. Next, I got to go with the QB, and that's Bryce Young. I like Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. It's close, but CJ Stroud, if anything, it's, can I get that national championship performance consistently over the course of time? If I don't, then we might have some problems. But realistically, Bryce Young, he's consistently brought it over the course of his career. Size is going to be a big question, not height, but weight, 194 pounds. We don't see a lot of sub 200-pound quarterbacks go into the NFL and tear it up. But he's got the arm talent. He's got a big-time arm. He's very confident as a passer. He's accurate with the football. I like his mobility. I like when he's in rhythm. He finds a way to play within rhythm. He makes some throws look effortless. So I think he's a good leader. He's a winner. I mean, the guy wins. So I love his skill set, and I genuinely think that Bryce Young is going to be somebody that we look at as potentially the number 1 player in the draft because of positional value. While I'll have Will Anderson, you could make the case for Bryce Young, and you can make the case that Bryce Young should be the first overall pick, depending on who's making the first overall pick. So I like his skill set. I think Bryce Young is worthy of the number 1 pick. If it is a team like Houston, he's a great fit for them, I believe, in what they're trying to build offensively. So Bryce Young has that skill set. Again, the biggest weakness is going to be size. That's going to be the thing that's going to get talked about between now until the sun sets on the 2023 NFL draft. But shifting focus to the next player, one of my favorite players, and that's Myles Murphy, 6'5", 275, a defensive tackle, edge rusher. I mean, he could play as a 5 technique at the next level in an odd front. He could stand up off the edge as a tilt 7. He could play inside as a 4-eye. He can do so many different things. Myles Murphy's got a great motor. I love his motor. Again, the versatility, some power to his game, some length to his game. There's some speed there and athleticism. That element is very important because you're not going to have to worry about just plugging him inside as a kind of a 4-eye or as a bona fide poor man's defensive tackle. He's going to be a little bit of everything. And I think he is worthy of that top 5 conversation as well. When you think of Seattle, he kind of fits what they look for with edge rushers. Arizona, with the news of J.J. Watt retiring at the end of the year, he could make some sense there. Detroit at 6, potentially, he would make some sense there. So I think he's a top 5, top 6 player in this draft. For me, a top 3, top 4, top player in this draft. So I love his skill set. I think you're looking at a guy that's going to run a lot better than expected, because when you look at him, you think, okay, you judge the book by the cover. We're looking at a player that's probably going to run like a sub 4.75, a sub 4.8, maybe somewhere in that range. And he's probably going to do a lot better than that, in my personal opinion. It wouldn't surprise me if he ran a sub 4.7, if I'm going to be honest. I think he's that athletic. And I think, again, his just measurables are going to really be impressive to a lot of people. And they're going to say, hey, this is a 3 or 4 type player on the draft board outside of maybe Will Anderson, Bryce Young, or potentially Jalen Carter. And again, I mean, I wouldn't bat an eye if you made him number 2 on your board. Or no, I mean, I wouldn't make him number 1, but I wouldn't bat an eye if you made him number 2. So I think Myles Murphy is a damn good football player. I've liked him since I laid my eyes on him over the start of the summer, and I think he's genuinely that dude. So we'll see how he ends up falling on the draft board. But the next player is probably going to catch a couple of people off guard. A lot of people are going to say, you can't have a player this high on your draft board. And I'm going to say you're crazy, because I genuinely think this player is that good and that talented. And that's Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. And 6 foot, 220, productive as all hell, spin move, jump cuts, lower body strength, long speed, can catch passes out of the backfield. Today's NFL running back that finds success. Positional value might hurt him, but I genuinely think from a talent perspective, he's as talented as we've seen in some time. And that's going, I mean, it's probably since the Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey days, if I'm going to be honest. He would be in that category, I think, if he was in that draft. And I think you can justify that there's a couple of teams that would be strongly considering him in this year's draft in the top 10. And I think he's positional value-wise, he makes a ton of sense. And I don't know where he's going to end up. I really don't. I mean, I could see Arizona pulling the trigger at 4 or 5, because that's what they do. They draft running backs. And that's without me really looking at the research of James Conner and his overall contract and things like that. But I could see them pulling the trigger there, because they go offensive heavy when they need to draft defense. But you could see a team like Las Vegas at 8. Josh Jacobs, it sounds like he's done there, just like maybe Derek Carr. But then you look even further down the draft board, Philly at 10. Could we see something with, Houston at 12? They're not going to do it because they took Dameon Pierce. But where's Washington? Where's potentially Jacksonville, Tampa Bay? There's quite a few different teams. And I think there's some teams that can make the jump up to take a player like this. It sounds crazy to trade up for a running back, but I genuinely think he is one of the 5 best players in the draft when you're talking about overall talent and immediate production at the next level. I think he's going to give you immediate production. Now, that does not mean I don't like Quentin Johnston from TCU or Jordan Addison, the wide receiver from USC. That doesn't mean I dislike CJ Stroud or Will Levis or Peter Skoronski or Broderick Jones or Michael Mayer, the tight end, but I'm not going to put him in the top 5 because I don't think he's one of the 5 best players, or Brian Breeze from Clemson. Or there's so many players that you could justify in that spot. But to me, those are the 5 guys that when you look at it, these guys make sense. And I think that when you talk about overall talent, you talk Anderson, Carter, Bryce Young, Miles Murphy, Bijan Robinson. That's where I'm at with this. So call me crazy if you want to. Do so in the comments. You can subscribe at C1 Draft here on YouTube, at Cover One on YouTube as well, or find me on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft. Tell me I'm crazy. I mean, go ahead. I don't care. But this is my take on it. It's not hot. I'm not trying to be flashy. I'm not trying to be sexy. If you know me, that's not what I do. And if you don't believe I watch tape, again, find it on Twitter. I don't care. It's fine. We can sit down. We'll break down the film. I have plenty of Bijan Robinson clips. I mean, it's literally Bijan, because he's that dude. He is literally that dude. So I think there's going to be a team out there that is genuinely intrigued by him. And I think some of those teams in the top 10, Arizona, Vegas, Philly, those are 3 teams to really keep an eye on when you think about the running back position. So outside of that, some other names to keep tabs on. I've got 3 here for you, and they're all defensive backs. So I'm not going to start with corners that are at the top of the draft, like Joey Porter Jr., who I like a lot, or Ringo from Georgia. I'm going to start with a different guy that we're going to see in Mobile. I want to plant the flag now. Julius Brents, the corner from Kansas State, 6'4", 202. I genuinely think this dude has kind of the it factor. I think he genuinely has the talent to take the step forward to be a true number 1 corner at the next level. We're talking about footwork. We're talking about lower body quickness and fluidity. We're talking length, like 6'4", former University of Iowa player. He has stood out in so many different ways when I watch Kansas State, with his length, his ability to create separations while receivers are running their routes. And it's not, you don't always want to create this separation, but he creates it enough to kind of jam them and prevent them when he's pressing at the line of scrimmage, to prevent them from releasing upfield. But he's also creating this separation to put himself, however he does it, to put himself in position to make plays on the football. He's playing through the hands of receivers. He's got the ball skills to intercept passes. Julius Brents, I think, is going to stand out at the Senior Bowl, and it wouldn't surprise me if he just starts shooting up draft boards left and right. And the teams that have multiple firsts, I mean, it's some teams that maybe have 3-4 picks in the top 50. They're gonna really value this kid. I genuinely think that, unless he comes out and his athletic testing is just horrendous, unless he bombs it. If he doesn't, I think he's good. But if he ends up bombing it, we got problems. But Julius Brents, one of my guys. I'm going to plant the flag now. I texted Eric Turner right away when I watched him. I said, you need to start watching this dude. You need it like now. Start watching him. Get the notes ready. We got to start asking him questions on coverage and technique and footwork and all of it, because he's going to be a dude. So Julius Brents, Kansas State, keep your tabs on him. The other 2 guys have popped up a little bit more over the last couple of days, and one of them is Jordan Battle from Alabama. I am very intrigued with this defensive back that I don't feel has been talked about a ton. A 6'1", 206 safety that has just been incredibly consistent over the course of his Alabama career for the last 4 years. 54 games played, over 250 tackles, 6 interceptions, 16 pass deflections. This past year, he had 71 total tackles. A season ago, he had 84 total tackles. He's recorded 4 picks in the last 2 years, nine pass breakups. I think from his overall skill set, he has so much to work with, and he's going to be a top 50, top 60 type player. And he's going to go somewhere in that range, and he's going to contribute. He kind of reminds me of like a Jordan Whitehead, if you guys remember him when he was coming out of Pitt. And I feel like Jordan Whitehead was forgotten about a ton during the draft process when he came out a few years back. And I feel like that's going to be the same case here with Jordan Battle, who could run in the 4-5 range somewhere, but he is physical. He's got great size. People rave about his leadership. And I think he is just fantastic. And I think he is going to be somebody that really stands out, and he's worth keeping tabs on. And the other person would be his teammate, Brian Branch, 6 foot, 193 pounds, safety, nickel type of corner. He's very versatile, very productive. And this dude just is quick to close. I mean, his click close ability is so impressive, but he's, again, super physical. And he has been a just crazy producer this past year with tackling, 90 plus tackles this year. He had 3 sacks. He had 14 tackles for loss. So he was somebody that played closer to the line of scrimmage. He was somebody that really was down in the box a little bit more, was making plays upfield, and that's great to see. And it didn't hurt him in the passing game at all. He still had 9 pass deflections. He had 2 interceptions. Over the course of his career, he had 9 pass deflections every single year. So he's had 27 over the course of his career. It goes to show that he'll play through the hands of receivers. He's willing to put his body on the line to break up any type of pass. So I love seeing that. And I think Brian Branch, and some people will even agree, he could be a borderline first-round safety and defensive back because of his skill set, his versatility, and his production. So I think he is super intriguing. I would definitely keep tabs on both of those Alabama players, Jordan Battle and Brian Branch. It's hard to watch 2 defensive backs at the same time. Trust me, I get it. But if you can, try to circle to both players and watch both these guys because I think they're that talented. I genuinely do. So those are some players to keep tabs on. Lastly, I want to put kind of a bow on this first episode back to the Cover One Draft Weekly show, and that is top 5 of the 2023 NFL Draft order. So where things sit today through 17 weeks of the regular season, where your favorite teams might be 4-12, 3-13, 4-11-1, whatever it might be. Houston currently has the number 1 pick of the 2023 NFL Draft. The Chicago Bears have the 2nd pick of the 2023 NFL Draft. Seattle Seahawks have the 3rd pick, thanks to the Denver Broncos trading for Russell Wilson. The Arizona Cardinals have the 4th pick, and with the 5th pick, the Indianapolis Colts have the 5th pick. So starting with Houston, if they lose, they get it. If they win and Chicago loses this weekend, Chicago ends up getting it. I think Houston's ultimately going to lose, even though Chicago's lost their last 9 games. I think Houston ends up getting this pick. And I think Houston's in a very interesting situation, a very interesting spot, because at 12, they could still, they have the 12th pick currently because of the Cleveland move with Deshaun Watson and stuff like that. They have 5 picks in the top 75 with the way it sits right now. They're in a position to where they could take 12 and move up potentially to 6 or 7 or maybe even 4, and they could get their quarterback. And I think if they wanted the QB, whether it was CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, or if they fell in love with Will Levis, I think that you could make that case. It all depends on what they want to do with 12. I think at 1, though, Bryce Young makes a lot of sense. You need that franchise-altering pick, the cornerstone, the guy that it's very clear that he's the guy. And I think that's what Bryce Young is. And I think that's the player that he can become for your organization. And I think that's what they're going to really focus on here is who that guy is going to be. And ultimately, I think it's going to be Bryce. I could be wrong. Could be Will Anderson with that defense, Lovie Smith, the way that they're kind of revamping that. I could understand it. But there's a couple of different edge rushers here where they could pass and say, hey, we'll take Jared Verse at 12 out of Florida State. Or, hey, maybe, just maybe Miles Murphy falls a little bit in the draft. Maybe Jalen Carter, maybe the stuff about him is real, and he ends up dropping to 12. I don't think that's going to happen. But, again, crazier things have happened. So I think Houston, a team that needs all the talent that they can get, maybe they don't trade out of 12. Maybe they stay there. And maybe they just continue to stockpile picks. They take as much talent and swings at the fences as they can in this draft. And I think the biggest swing they got to figure out here is QB. And I don't think they're going to land a Lamar Jackson in free agency. I don't think they're going to land potentially any QB in free agency unless they go out and get like Jimmy Garoppolo or trade for Derek Carr. And I don't even know if that's possible. I don't even know if it's feasible. And at this rate, Why not roll the dice with Bryce Young or CJ Stroud? I think it's going to be a QB for Houston. We'll see how that goes. But second pick, Chicago. Look, I know it would be nice to go out and get Peter Skoronski or Broderick Jones or Jalen Duncan from Maryland or Paris Johnson from Ohio State or whatever offensive tackle you want. But I'm going to be honest, like, you need the best players available right now. And Will Anderson for that defense, with how the Detroit Lions have revamped their offense with Green Bay, and even though Aaron Rodgers is maybe on his last leg, and with how Minnesota's offense has been, the NFC North can score some points right now. They need talent defensively, and I think Will Anderson is perfect for them. So whether they get the first pick or the second pick, I think there's a good chance it's Will Anderson at 1 or 2 for the Chicago Bears. Number 3, Seattle. Look, Denver, we can say that that's the worst trade of all time, but we all thought that Denver gave up a lot, but then to see the play from Russell Wilson, it just makes it look even worse right now. He has fallen off a cliff. Hopefully, some veteran coach, not named Nathaniel Hackett, first-time head coach, maybe somebody else, maybe that's Harbaugh or Frank Reich or something like that. Maybe they can fix Russell Wilson there in Denver. But for Seattle, is Pete Carroll coming back? Yes or no? And regardless of what happens, is Geno Smith the future? Can somebody answer that question for me? Is Geno Smith the guy? Because if he's not the guy, here's the deal. CJ Stroud, right? Like after the national championship, you could potentially, again, make the case, or not after the national championship, but after this past weekend with what he did against Georgia, the way he put it all on the line and had the best game of his career, some of the throws he was making, leaving his body on the line, showing mobility, the mobility concerns, I think we can erase that. I mean, I've said that from day one. The guy's a lot more mobile than you think. He just doesn't tuck it and run it because he tries to make those throws downfield. And I don't know if that's because of coaching. I don't know if it's because of fear. I don't know what it is. But CJ Stroud at times would not run the football. And the pro comparison to Jared Goff has been thrown his way. And you can see it when he plays timid and he doesn't go through his progressions and showing his mobility and the toughness. But he did it against Georgia with the national championship hanging in the balance. I can only imagine what happens here in the NFL with Super Bowls, NFC championship games, AFC championship games, whatever conference he goes to. You have to imagine it's going to get better. So CJ Stroud, Seattle, I love this fit. They have pick number, as of right now, pick 19. They could build around him. They could take Stroud at 3. They could take a receiver at 19. I know they have Lockett and Metcalf, but you can always throw another weapon on a rookie deal, on a 5-year rookie deal with Metcalf, who only got a 3-year deal. Lockett, who's not getting any younger, but I mean, you could add a Jackson Smith here. You could look at a potential Josh Downs, a Quentin Johnston, a Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison would be phenomenal in that offense with CJ Stroud. So I think there's a lot of options for Seattle at 19, but at 3, quarterback, you got to get it right. It's got to be that type of player, I think. And maybe it's Jalen Carter. Maybe it's Myles Murphy. I said it earlier. Myles Murphy kind of fits what Seattle looks for in edge rushers. Thicker build, has some athleticism to him, good length, little power. I could see that. But CJ Stroud with Geno Smith as the potential bridge quarterback for maybe one more year, I could see it. But it all depends on coaching. Who's the coach? Do they go out? Does John Schneider open up the checkbook and go get Jim Harbaugh and then draft CJ Stroud? Does he go out and bring in a Ben Johnson or something like that? I don't want him to take, Ben Johnson from Detroit, but it could happen. So we'll see how that goes. We genuinely will see how that goes. But Stroud at 3 makes a ton of sense. At 4, Arizona. This is a wild card because when you think you know what they're going to do, I mean, Jalen Carter, if he's there, I mean, that's run it in. If Will Anderson's there, run it in. But this is Arizona. The time that they needed defensive backs last year, they were drafting wide receivers. And when they need offensive line, they're drafting linebackers. So I don't know what this team does. But their quarterback's coming off an injury. That's why I'm saying the Bijan Robinson thing. I mean, I genuinely think that that's a logistic landing spot because, look, James Conner, I know I'm now looking it up. He's 27. I like James Conner. He's got a 3-year deal. So you don't want to overspend at the position, but you can get out of that contract after next season. So you could save $7-8 million by doing that. And if James Conner ends up getting dinged up, you kind of in the wings, you got a rookie running back. It sounds crazy, but you got it in the wings. But they could go. Jalen Carter, home run, makes a ton of sense. Peter Skoronski from Northwestern, he would make a lot of sense. 4 is a little rich, but you could make the case there. I like the offensive tackles in this class. I just don't know if they're top 5 guys. Like, I've seen top 5 guys in the last couple of drafts, and I just don't know if I see it in this draft right now. Maybe I'll find somebody, but I just don't know right now. So that said, Bijan Robinson, Jalen Carter, interior defensive lineman from Georgia, and Myles Murphy. Those would be the guys that just make a lot of sense. Could they move back? Absolutely. If they move back, they could look at Ringo from Georgia. They could look at Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State. I love Joey Porter Jr. there. If they move back, I don't see a corner at the top 5 level in this draft. Same with offensive tackle. So I could see one of those two things happening. And do they move back? Do they take a receiver? Do they go get Jordan Addison from USC? Do they draft Quentin Johnston? I don't know what direction they're going to end up going. Ultimately, it's still very early. We're still sorting through the regular season, but Arizona's super interesting there at 4. And then number 5, Indianapolis, it's QB. It's got to be a QB, right? Like, there's no way. I guess I can't say that, but Jim Irsay, is he really going to go out and get like a Jimmy Garoppolo? Is he really going to go out and get a Derek Carr? I could see it. I could see him overpaying. I could see him sending a first-round pick to the New York Jets for frickin' Zach Wilson. I genuinely could. But, come on, man. I don't know. I think that this is a QB. I think Will Levis makes a lot of sense. I like Will Levis. Some people don't like him. I like the tools I see with him. I think there's times when he puts it together with his upper body and his lower body, and I swear there are times he throws a football and it looks like Matthew Stafford. Sounds crazy, but I genuinely think that's the case. Like, that is what I see sometimes, and I've seen probably more Matthew Stafford than the average Joe. He played for my team for like 10, 11 years. I watched it every weekend, rewatched it all 22, rewatched the replay. Like, that's what I think. Will Levis could be that type of guy. He's got the tools to get there. It depends on if he's going to get mayo out of his coffee or not. I don't know. I don't know why he's wasting a good cup of coffee. But at 5, could see it. I could genuinely see it. Could see CJ Stroud there or Bryce Young if one of those guys end up falling to 5. Other than that, maybe Anthony Richardson. I haven't talked about him yet on this show because the lower body with Richardson, like, when it's on, it's really good. The arm is strong as hell. Mobility is there. Like, you think of Cam Newton and Josh Allen when you see him, but it's just really hard to say what he's going to be at the next level. Like, it's a projection. It's a project. It takes NFL coaching to get him right. And for the Bills, they had Sean McDermott. They had Brian Dable. For Anthony Richardson, I don't know what he's getting when he goes to the Colts. It better not be Jeff Saturday because they're going to score 3, 6, 7 points a game, maybe. They're bad. So there's some talent there. There's some pieces to build around. Is it with the veteran QB? Because they've done the veteran QB a couple times now. Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, it's not working. So I'm very intrigued with Indy. I think a QB, though, is certainly somebody. If it's not a QB, I think offensive tackle would also make a lot of sense. I think Skoronski from Northwestern would be kind of a home run fit for them. Paris Johnson, Ohio State, Broderick Jones, Georgia. I think one of those offensive tackles, you could make the case for top 10, top 5, though. It's rich, but the Colts, they could use some help there. I know they got Raymond. I know they got Braden Smith and Quentin Nelson, and I know they got players, but they need some help up front too right now. So we'll see how it goes. But that's the top 5 right now. Those are the top 5 teams and kind of where it sits. You're looking at Houston, Chicago, Seattle, Arizona, Indianapolis. Next week, we'll kind of revisit this top 5. We'll see how it's looking. And then we'll probably go down the list a little bit more. Some more players to watch out for. We'll start talking about, 4 or 5 other players to watch for. And we'll probably talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs and just kind of where it's at, because that'll be kind of fresh on our mind. And we'll have our official seedings. We should have kind of where games are going to be playing for the wild card of the NFL. So I'm looking forward to all that, but I'm happy to be back right here on the Cover One Draft Weekly show. So if you guys haven't done so yet, you guys should be reading the ticker on the bottom of the screen. You can find me on Twitter at RussNFLDraft. You can find Cover One on Twitter at Cover One. You can find them on YouTube at Cover One. But most importantly, you need to start subscribing to our page on YouTube. It's very simple. If you go to Cover One on YouTube, you can click channels. You can find the Cover One Draft Weekly show, or you can just simply search at C1 Draft, and it should pop up there. And you should be able to just click subscribe, and that helps us create more content for you, especially here within the draft. So there's a lot of stuff coming. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch me today or listen to me and talk a little football. I'm looking forward to doing another show next week and doing some more audio stuff and video stuff moving forward right here on the Cover One Draft Weekly